I have been trying to formulate this argument in my head for a while now. Since the first reveal of Ubisoft's upcoming release on Assassin's Creed Odyssey back at 2018's E3, there's been an extremely mixed response to the game's concept. Despite the game sharing the core mechanics of the series' previous main entry, Assassin's Creed Origins, it is plain to see that the atmosphere of the game is a significant departure from its predecessors. The primary cause of this separation is the change in the protagonist's place of belonging, now being a Spartan mercenary with seemingly no connection to the Assassin's Creed, as the story occurs centuries before the Brotherhood's inception in ancient Egypt. This, as far as I can tell, is the main cause for concern for many fans of the series to this date. I classify myself among the long-standing fans of the series, having owned every main entry in the series and purchased every game since Assassin's Creed 2 on their respective release dates. However, I do not fall into the category of fans disappointed with the seemingly new direction of the story. I will continue to use phrases such as seemingly and supposed, based on the fact that I am yet to play the game and thus cannot with any certainty convey the realities of the game's narrative. However, from what I have seen so far, I'm excited to roleplay as an ancient Greek mercenary, detaching myself from any prior expectations of a story tied to the existence of the Brotherhood. This does not mean, however, that I am disregarding the disappointment or concerns other fans possess in regards to the narrative switch. Many fans hold the Assassin's Creed as the crux of the story, the central point by which the entire lore of the series world revolves around. As such, they have a right to be disappointed with what seems to be a complete detour from the main story. I've heard two different arguments being thrown back and forth between the opposing sides of this debate. Those disappointed with the change will often throw out the phrase, "This is not Assassin's Creed anymore," arguing that the series has lost its identity. The counter-argument, often levied against it, is that the same fans who cried out that the games were stale and needed to change are now criticizing the fact that things have been altered and are demanding a return to the same formula they previously denounced as hollow, repetitive, and unintuitive. I think both of these arguments are in some regards true, yet also misunderstand each other greatly. Let us start with those who dislike the new direction. I believe it is unfair to simply dismiss them as being averse to change, especially in light of any previous demands for it they might have made. Change can come in various forms, and I think it is fair to say that many of the changes they requested were likely in regards to gameplay and perhaps the quality of the writing. Things could have been changed to a less extreme degree than what is presented in Assassin's Creed Odyssey. As previously stated, some hold the Brotherhood as the central point of this gaming universe, and they hoped that positive change would be made around it, rather than abandoning it for another core. When you are disappointed with the performance of a football team, for example, you do not replace them with cricket players. As such, from that perspective, I can understand any concerns and disappointments at the shift presented in Odyssey. However, in support of the other argument, I would like to input my own personal opinion. I do not believe that the assassins are the core of the world Ubisoft created. That, of course, sounds utterly ridiculous, given that they are the namesake of the series. I should also mention that I personally really enjoy the concept of the Brotherhood, and get excited by the idea of their involvement in each narrative. However, I'm rarely satisfied with their actual portrayal in each entry. The true core of this world, and the only thing genuinely required to make an entry relevant, is the presence and involvement of the first civilization. The first civilization is the catalyst by which Ubisoft's rendition of real history is able to take a unique course, and what gives it its own identity. The Templars, the Assassins, the Order of Ancients, the Hidden Ones, all of them are just various factions in Ubisoft's world. But if any were the center of it, then the narrative Ubisoft presented would be extremely limited in scale. To return to the Brotherhood and their involvement in most games, I've gradually come to realize that although I enjoy them in concept, their presence in more and more games makes them duller, less intriguing, and in some cases much more unlikable. The crux of each story is often a uniquely gifted protagonist, whom up until this point is typically, although not always, an assassin of the Brotherhood. yet their narratives are often more personal than the goals of the Brotherhood at large. In fact, many games portray the Brotherhood as this minor background presence that the protagonist is loosely tied to, but primarily acts independent of. Arno hated the rules and regulations of the Brotherhood, and often acted without permission, and Evie and Jacob rarely interacted with the Brotherhood at all. Edward was a pirate first and an assassin much, much later, only truly joining them towards the end of the game. Even Ezio, in his first game, despite interacting with and knowing of the Brotherhood, did not truly see himself as a part of it until the last few missions of the game. He mostly acted out of his own morals and ideals for revenge. The Brotherhood itself only really felt like a constant presence in the title of the same name, and slightly in Revelations, whilst games such as Assassin's Creed 3 had the Brotherhood as a background presence overshadowed by factions such as the Revolutionary Army. When the Brotherhood is treated with narrative significance, it is often allowed to develop and shine. But when it merely feels like a background grunt, it can feel sort of pathetic and incompetent. It often feels that without the unnaturally gifted protagonist of each title, the Brotherhood would completely fail in its quest, too busy with infighting, hesitation, or inferior resources. As such, this brings us back to the original point that the protagonist defines the journey, not the Brotherhood itself. On a more personal note, I feel a slight distrust in regards to the quality of Ubisoft's writing. Sometimes it can be powerful, moving, and engrave itself in my memory so that I am always quoting it internally. Other times, it's extremely clunky, lackluster, and poor. The Brotherhood itself is a concept that I feel has really suffered from this, as in contrast to my previous point regarding the Brotherhood being treated with narrative significance, there is a risk of that significance sinking the mystique and the intrigue of its lore. Assassin's Creed Origins, I felt, provided some fairly weak explanations for the Brotherhood's existence. Perhaps my expectations were too high, but this organization that goes on to exist for thousands of years across the globe has an extremely average and predictable origin. It's a revenge story, much like many of the other Assassin's Creed games, and not a particularly unique one. Concepts such as the missing ring finger are given fairly disappointing histories, and the use of the HUD and the signature style of combat or stealthing are simply attributed to one simple cause, being, it's just because that's how Bayek did it. Even the Hidden Blade, the most defining attribute of the Brotherhood, is simply given to Bayek just over an hour or more into the game because Aya was given a replica by Cleopatra. It just felt so lazy. And yet, I loved Origins, so much so that I would likely rank it my second best Assassin's Creed game. But it was in spite of the Brotherhood stuff, not because of it. Bayek was a fantastic character, his role as a Magi intriguing, and the world of ancient Egypt all made for an exciting story and world. In fact, even the Hidden Ones DLC, which explored the Brotherhood after it had actually been founded, was honestly quite dull. They don't really do anything of worth, only Bayek and Aya do, and even then it's nothing groundbreaking. All that being said, does that mean the Brotherhood is a lost narrative cause and should simply be abandoned for something new? Absolutely not. And this is what most concerns regarding Odyssey are truly about. The Brotherhood may have been poorly handled before, but the potential is still there. At its strongest, we get incredible moments such as the eventual meeting between Ezio and Altair. They say if something is not broken, then do not fix it. Yet I would argue that the story of the Brotherhood is broken. However, the key word there is fix, not replace. Of course, there are other concerns people have for the new game that explain their displeasure. The new dialogue choices, a first for the series, as well as the character choice, conceptually break the established lore of this world. The previous games did not include choice because the premise of the games is that they are all played-back simulations of DNA-encoded memories, allowing a present-day protagonist to relive the life of a long-dead historical figure. They must, however, remain synchronized with how the events actually played out. They cannot alter the past, and as such, scripted narrative was the only logical way to prevent these stories. Of course, if Ubisoft have clearly written a way around this obstacle, then I see no issue with it. However, I'm admittedly skeptical that they will. My own explanation for such a phenomenon as changeable memories would be that the DNA acquired of the ancient Greek mercenary was somehow corrupted, and thus a new type of animus would be created, one that reads the corrupted data and essentially auto-completes it with things that make sense. Think of it as predictive text for your phone. It doesn't know everything with certainty, so the areas that can take diverging paths are simulated rather than recreated by the animus. I am genuinely excited for these changes. Most Assassin's Creed games have a very limited replay value. I tend to play them all multiple times because I am a history buff and enjoy being in these worlds. But admittedly, the story provides little reason to be replayed, and nothing you do will ultimately diverge from previous playthroughs. By contrast, Odyssey has multiple reasons to replay the game, as not only can you experience the story from the perspective of two different characters, granted it is the same story with the same dialogue options, but you can also make different narrative decisions, altering the overall story. I also hope this new dialogue choice mechanic will add greater opportunities to explore the lore further, asking questions I originally did not have the chance to. This also comes with a new interaction system in which the camera focuses on the faces of the two speakers, in contrast to the previous games, where the protagonist interacted with random quest-giving NPCs. Many, but not all, of these interactions were presented via a bland, somewhat disengaged over-the-shoulder camera angle that made the conversation far less engaging. As Luke Stevens mentions in his video Assassin's Creed Origins: The Ultimate Critique, Ubisoft has previously exhibited a strange apprehension towards lengthy cutscenes, rarely allowing them to stretch beyond the minute if they can help it. However, a valid concern many have about this is that it is dependent on the quality of Ubisoft's writing. A lot of games with dialogue choices have a lot of poorly written, unmemorable and clunky lines of dialogue, usually because the writers are being stretched thin in as many directions as possible. On a side note, I personally find myself more invested in the history on display than the story itself, so having a chance to explore ancient Greece, whether it be for an assassin avatar or not, is one of the most intriguing aspects of the game. All of this being said, the one mindset that I cannot abide is the desire to see the game crash and burn, or in other words, people who want the game to fail. I can understand the approach they might be taking, as if the game fails then perhaps Ubisoft will return to a course more in line with those type of fans' vision of the franchise. However, surely in cases like this we should all be hoping that the game is a success, despite our initial negative responses. I do not mean we should hope it is a commercial success, as plenty of bad games perform well financially despite their lackluster content. What I mean is that we should hope that despite expectations of disaster, we should still be hoping the quality of the final product is one to be proud of. If your expectations or personal vision eclipse the actual fantastic quality of the game, then not only are your demands too high, they are also too narrow. Better to be pleasantly surprised by something you did not know you wanted than to outright denounce anything unconventional to your personal vision. The game, upon its release, should be judged for what it is, and if the game is genuinely a poor quality game, then the truth should be spoken and Ubisoft will have to course correct accordingly. Yet if the game succeeds against the odds, perhaps what the series needs should also be re-evaluated. Regardless, expectations are a tricky thing. In one regard, expectations set a standard by which we determine if something has succeeded or failed. However, expectations can be very subjective forms of rating. Additionally, if everything was in line with what we expected from the very beginning, then we would be left with nothing to surprise us. Perhaps it's just a personal preference of mine, but my only expectation is an obscure yet high quality. The course they take to get there is malleable, and I am open to change. But if they still get there in a way I did not anticipate, then I will be all the more impressed by it. Expectations are often too narrow in their desires. Quality, by contrast, is unspecific in its conception, only defined by its final impact.